If your UCAT is approaching shortly over the next couple of months and you're starting to study now, one thing that you do have to constantly keep in mind with your study is reflection. You'll hear it in other videos, and if you watch any other YouTube video, a lot of the people you will be watching will be telling you to reflect on your mocks and sort of analyse your mocks in between. If you have started your mocks just now, or you are planning on starting mocks soon, this is going to be the video for you, as I'm going to take you exactly through how I would analyse my mock to get better for the exam. If this is the first of my videos you've seen, please feel free to subscribe, as I'm taking people through the medicine application process, how I did it without knowing anybody in medicine and how I managed to get in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip over to the computer side of things, where I'm going to put my face in the top of the screen and I'll explain it through then. Right, so you should be able to see this on my screen now. For reference, I'm using the application OneNote. You'll be able to see it at the bottom. And now I'm in full screen. So this is essentially just a thing sort of like Microsoft Word, where you can collate different documents like I've done with this. Again, for reference, what I'm doing is I've done Medify mocks. Medify was my sort of study choice, my study platform of choice for leading up to the UCAT. What I've also done is I've blocked out every individual mock. So what I've done here is I've put 2 different mocks that I've done on screen, as you'll be able to see already, and then I've analysed them after exactly how I've done it. So I've just copied and pasted this exactly from the sort of analysis document that I did myself. I've blocked out the mock number, and I've blocked out individual questions, the sort of distinguishing things from each individual question. So if you do encounter these questions, you won't be able to sort of get any answers from it or anything, just to make sure your mocks are quite accurate. So first, this is one of the earlier mocks towards the start. It was a full mock that I did. I'll zoom straight in on the verbal reasoning, and I'll get started with this straight away. So verbal reasoning, there's 44 questions obviously. I got 21 correct and 23 incorrect. That gave me a score of 570, which was actually pretty much what I got in the exam. I got 590 in the exam, so it was quite hit or miss. So this is how I would lay it out. I would take a screenshot of the entire page that I would get on the Medify, the sort of analysis part of Medify. I would screenshot the entire page, as you can see on the left hand side, and then I would paste it into this document. Then on the right hand side of the screen, what I would do is I would make my notes and sort of reflect on it in my own head. So as you can see here, I would add up all the scores. Here you can see the decision making is sort of been scribbled over. What you can do in the decision making is go onto a website. I can't remember exactly what it's called. It's like a score converter that takes the syllogisms in, and you can get the exact score. So my exact score here was 590, as opposed to the range that I've scribbled out here. So verbal reasoning, 570. This is exactly how I would structure it. So in the part where I would write my own things, I would write more or less. So the main issue I see in verbal reasoning is I just get overwhelmed with large texts. I end up thinking time, but it's actually just sort of leading me to answer wrong from panicking about the time. This is what I felt on my first mock, and to be honest, I didn't actually take this into account until about mock 10, where I realised that this needs to be done. So then I wrote a tip for future. Read the question first, then the first sentence to gauge the meaning. Skim the rest, and then make a note either mentally on my blackboard about what each paragraph is about. I wouldn't take that advice. That was me at the start. I'd obviously watched a video on how to do something. Don't take that advice, it's not that good. You don't have time to do that. Another tip that I said was, if there is a really strong word, like always true, definitely true, it's likely not going to be this unless it does explicitly state in the text, say like King Henry always did whatever, or because always true and definitely true in sort of a UCAT sense means 100% of the time. So if it didn't say this sort of straight away and it didn't say this explicitly, I would just say either no or can't tell. The main take back I said from verbal reasoning was panicking from a big text will be the failure of my UCAT score, and sort of this section in general. If it's huge and I don't know the topic, just flag it and skip it. I've mentioned this in the previous verbal reasoning sort of tips video that I've mentioned, if you've seen that. It's not worth the time when you can go back to it, as I've said. Read the question and stuff slowly and get the gauge of every paragraph. Okay, on to decision making. As I've said, you can convert the score from the range that Medify gives you to an exact score using, I think it's just like decision making score converter if you type it in on YouTube. It is quite helpful because obviously in the exam you're going to get an individual score. So for decision making, I sort of wrote down We can't assume more or less of something unless we're given an all, none, or are given values, sort of exact values. Some or not many are not comparable, so most of the time they will be no. And then I sort of straight away from one of the earlier mocks, the use of language in decision making is very important. So will, if you hear sort of like something will happen in decision making, that means definitely. Can means could possibly also not. And then when going for yes or no conclusions, tend to stray away from strong words like will, unless, as I've said in the sort of verbal reasoning, it has to be stated absolutely explicitly. Keep using whiteboards for orientation questions, that's quite straightforward. If you're missing one thing in the orientation questions, reread the question until you have only one missing variable. It's almost like an algebra equation in decision making some of the time. You only need to sort of have one missing variable, and then you can find out most of the things. So in the strongest argument questions of decision making, it's always going to be the one that includes all points in the statement. If the statement says, for example, something about smoking, something about age, and something about sort of obesity, the argument that is going to be the strongest has to state all three of these things and has to make a valid point about it. It can't be opinionated, it has to be sort of objective fact about it. So looking at the units and tables, so they can trick you and in the answer say 46 when the data displays it as 46,000. And apparently this lost me a question. I don't actually know what I'm referring to there, but you get what I mean. Generally, what I'm doing in these sections is thinking about the questions that I found particularly hard and reflecting on what I did wrong and what I can do better. This is one thing that you definitely, generally, on the general analysis point, have to do in between each mock. If you watch my video about sort of timing between the mocks and how to plan your UCAT, one thing I did say is do one mock and then the next day take a full day off to analyse for this mock. It is doing things like this that will improve your score. Banging out constant mocks and constant UCAT mocks isn't actually going to get you many places because you're not going to be able to pick up on what you've done wrong. And then I've obviously scored this one out as I didn't think it was that relevant. Weak points, so then some Venn diagrams I said I found weak, and some percentage probability and probability generally, that didn't change. I constantly found these things difficult as I just chose not to sort of pick up on them. I did a little bit of study on them one day, but again, if you've watched my videos again on sort of the walkthroughs, a lot of the things I just think isn't even worth learning. If you don't know the basics, learn the basics, but see specific 1 mark questions that you might not even get. It's up to you if you study it, but I would almost say don't waste your time. There's other stuff that you could be learning. Probability was one of these things that I just didn't even think was worth learning because it was essentially a 1 marker. And also, as you've also seen, I don't know what this point meant, but I was obviously joking about something in my own head. So just do take it lighthearted because the reflection part is about you. And if you want to make jokes about things, go for it because it is sort of quite a grueling process. If you can make jokes about the UCAT, just go for it. You're going to be able to get through it a lot easier. So quantitative reasoning, my score was 550. I said if you're missing one variable in a mean calculation, you can do it. Obviously, like if you have the mean is 3 and you find one missing value, you can do it. You can do 3 times the number of groups and then find the sum of the groups without the missing value. It's basically the same thing in all of maths and all of just logic in general. If you have one missing variable, most of the time you'll be able to find things out. This is holding true for majority of things in decision making. If Mary has only 8 cakes, which is 11% of the amount she should make, how many should she make in total? Then she needs to times basically 0.11 times x equals 8. And to find that, obviously, just rearrange the equation to be 8 over 0.11. This is the number she needs to make. As you can probably tell, as I've said, this is one of the starting mocks, so a lot of the stuff in this was new to me. I mean, I didn't study physics in school, so even speed, distance, time was actually new to me, so a lot of you sitting this will probably be in a better position than I was at the start of it. Speed, distance, time needs to be in hours, so 2 minutes is 2 over 60, which is 1 over 30. A lot of you guys probably knew this. I didn't. One of these things that you just pick up throughout studying for the UCAT. You might have not studied physics like me. If you didn't, you might be at a bit of a disadvantage like I was, but you can get over it. Need to bear in mind the tables. It may say per 100 mil in the header. I mentioned this in my quantitative reasoning video as well. and we can't determine the furthest away x unless we're given the actual distance or speed. Again, I don't even know what this refers to, but you can sort of get what I'm getting at here. You need to reflect on the individual questions that you found hard, the questions that you didn't get right, the questions that you didn't understand, and then in this document, this is how you go over it. So previously, again, I've said I didn't study physics in school. Acceleration equals speed change in speed over time. I'm going to put my hands up straight away. I actually didn't even know what this formula was before I studied the UCAT. Didn't study physics, didn't care about physics. I was learning as I went along. If anybody is in a similar situation here, do what I did, write down these formulas and note them down. If you did study physics at school and you know sort of these formulas off by heart, you're in a good position to do this. Again, I've said in QR that weak points are my volumes, speed, distance, time, velocity / acceleration. And that was, again, I think I would say down to me not studying physics. For some reason I didn't include an abstract reasoning here. I think it was because my reasoning at this time was, if it's abstract reasoning, just put all the stuff you find in a document. So what I would do at the start is I would write down, as I've mentioned previously, every single questions pattern in a Word document. If you are looking for that Word document, I have a video sort of titled Abstract Reasoning Tips, I think. And in the description of that video, I've got all my notes for the abstract reasoning. So that is what I'm referring to just now. I didn't do abstract reasoning reflections because all abstract reasoning really needs is you to do lots of questions sort of one after another. If you just absolutely cram abstract reasoning, take note of every single pattern that you come across, you'll be fine. I didn't really feel like I needed to reflect on it, which I think I did the same here. So in this mock, as you can see, it probably wasn't a good mock, and I've got a sad face here. Score 2,490 overall. I got 650 in the verbal reasoning, which was probably a fluke because who's good at verbal reasoning? Decision making, I got 590, quantitative reasoning 650, abstract reasoning 600, and I got a band 1 somehow. I don't know why I put a sad face there. I think it was because this is quite close to my exam and I wanted a higher thing. I put the reflection that I had at the start straight away. Why are my scores getting bad? I did verbal reasoning and abstract reasoning mini mocks this morning with quite high scores, potential burnout. You have to be aware of other things other than Medify. Do you feel in yourself that you're getting tired, that you're getting stressed about the UCAT, that it's taking over your life? If you do, just take a day off. It's not a big deal. Just take a day off. You're going to benefit more from the day off than you are from cramming in lots of UCAT. You have to be able to remember you're a person. You're not a UCAT robot. So verbal reasoning, bear in mind, as I've said, this was sort of close to the exam date, so I was used to stuff. I didn't really need to reflect on individual difficult questions. As you get through your UCAT mocks, you will realise that you know what you can and can't do. This is a sort of prime example of this. My first verbal reasoning, as you can see up here, there's about 10 lines here, but down here I have just 1 line or 2 lines. So verbal reasoning, better than I did yesterday, so I was obviously being positive about something, as I skipped the bad ones and just moved on. Some of the wording in these things are a piss take. The word may could change the whole question to be false, and be very mindful of how they word the question. This again will be a common theme for you throughout all of verbal reasoning and the UCAT in general. Individual words mean very specific things. So it is important just to be mindful of sort of the specific words. As pedantic and ridiculous it is, you do have to be specific about the words. TM, I was obviously absolutely raging that I got 590. All of the questions I took on, I got wrong, all of them. I also then in turn missed out all of the last questions. 10 of them I missed. And obviously I'm speaking to myself in like the third person here. I know you don't think so, but timing is a weakness on DM, hurry up. Here is the one tip that I would say specifically helped me with the analysis. This is the one tip. Copy and paste individual questions. If you have a question you just don't get at all and you really need to get your head around it and it's a stubborn question, just copy and paste it and put it in this diagram, in this sort of analysis spreadsheet as well. So here I've got a decision making syllogism question. I'm not going to, I've blurred out the words because if you do get this in a future mock you won't be able to read it. Don't read the right hand side if you don't want to. If you really want to know the answers, then read the right hand side. But basically the premise of this question was all X that can A can also do B, whereas Y cannot B. all blank that can blank, blank cannot blank. Basically, I found this question quite difficult. So what I did was I copy and pasted the question, and then I wrote down the different syllogism logic diagrams. So this is essentially this diagram here. The two circles are this premise of all x that can A can B, y cannot B. I can do a video on syllogisms if you do want. They are quite confusing. I'd need to brush up on my logic before I do it. That's honestly why I've not posted a decision making one, because I have lost a bit of my touch on decision making because I've not done it for a year. But essentially, the one tip that I do want to say, and if you take one thing from this video, is if you make this document, post specific questions in it that you find difficult so that you can actually reflect on and you can get the sort of the logic behind the questions, because the chances are the words will change in the questions from between sort of medifying the exam, but the actual logic behind them stays the same. So all x that can A can B, y cannot B. You could possibly get something like that in the exam, but the words will just change about a wee bit. Time management is way more important in DM than you think. Look at how many you had to guess and skip at the end. It was a rubbish score. Time management, again, was the issue here. So if we then scroll over to the left, we can see that decision making, I got a score of 590. It's not great, it's not awful. 1 second, 1 second, 0 second, 1 second, 0 second. I obviously did the logic that I'd mentioned previously in other videos where I guessed sort of all A, all B, because I actually somehow guessed 2 out of the 5 here right. But yeah, you can see obviously by looking at this, Medify is quite good for this. If you zoom in, it gives you the ones that you the questions that you took specifically way too long on. For example, 153 seconds, 136 seconds, 188 seconds even. You don't have to get too caught up in the specific sections and how long it should take you to do each question. I mean, some YouTube videos tell you to, but to be honest, it's more stress than it's worth, I would say. Just know that like you can take long on syllogisms, but make sure they're right. If you think it's wordy and if you think it's long, just skip it. Especially in a situation where you feel like you're going to run out of time. And as I said, if you do a lot of mocks, you will get to the realisation of what's taking too long and what's not. And then the last thing I said about decision making is, in the questions that follow the theme of which combination does not exist, and then they give you a diagram, you're looking for a non-overlapped area of the two combinations. So for example, it would be something like that. The two combinations are not available then, and it should not take you long to infer at all. And I just mentioned how important time management is. Okay, quantitative reasoning. I need to take, before I say that, quantitative reasoning, I got 650, so it's alright. I need to take note of any extra information that's given in the text. So this is actually where, in my quantitative reasoning video, this is where the point about reading the text as well came from. I got a few questions wrong because of this, and I ended up missing out a lot of easy marks for just not adding on sort of an extra 15-minute wait that it stayed in the first text at the top. You have to read the text, and this is where I went wrong about it, and this is then where I changed it for the exam. So you will be able to see where exactly I've gone wrong in something, where I've reflected on it, and then where I've changed it for the better. This is exactly what I'd like you people watching this to do as well, because it does honestly change things. This is where I gained a lot of marks in quantitative reasoning and ended up getting a score of 800. Obviously here, had a bit of a moment, I think. Diameter is the full length across, radius is half. Idiot. In the currency conversion questions, I do great at them, but I need to add the conversion tax on at the end and not to the original values. So for example, if 1,214 yen goes to £142 with a 2% conversion rate, you then have to do the sum basically, find the total converted, or if it is, and then you have to do £142 times 1.02, blah, 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 blah. Again, I don't know what this is referring to, but you can see the places that I've went wrong, exactly what I've written about them, and then what I've taken on in the next mock not to do this again. So this was, I think, maybe about, out of all these scores, these were maybe about 8 mocks apart. It's not great. I jumped up a score of about 210 overall, which actually, to be honest, is quite good. In between these mocks, I'd obviously fluctuated. I think before I'd got a score of 2,600 and I've jumped down to 2,400 now, which is obviously why that sad face is there. Yeah, I mean, again, have fun with the reflection process. It's not actually meant to be that bad. Obviously I didn't realise that diameter is the full length across and radius is half in the heat of the moment, so it's alright, doesn't matter, we're not absolutely geniuses. You don't have to be a genius to be a doctor, you just have to be hardworking. If you're watching videos like this, you will be hardworking. Abstract reasoning, I'll tell you what happened at this point. So in abstract reasoning I got a score of 600. By this point, what I had done is I'd filled up about 4 pages of a document with specific patterns. So obviously I was getting quite cocky at this point. I thought that I'd seen all the patterns, and then what I ended up doing was adding an abstract reasoning section. So as you can see in the first one up here, I don't have an abstract reasoning question because I would put every single question into the document. But towards the end of the studying, what I would do is only the difficult questions, I would put them in the document. So for example, even or odd number of curved sides. Doesn't sound that difficult, but I obviously missed it and I thought it was one that I could improve on. The black circles sit on the side or on the corners based on A or B. All lines below the plus side of the shapes are odd, and all lines above the sides of the shape are even. Again, you don't need to know this. Essentially, put in specific details from your mock, screenshot the Medify result such as this, and then post it in a document and write down specific questions you got wrong, things you can do to improve it, and then figure out how to improve it. The way that I said to do this in my previous video, take a full day to do the mock, analyse some of it after, wake up on a fresh mind, and then analyse it all. If you're doing analysis on a fresh mind, you'll be able to actually remember what you're saying to yourself and then pick it up and get it better for the future mocks. I hope this does make sense. Let me know if it does make sense in the comments. If it does, thank you, and if it doesn't, I can make other videos on it. It is important to do this, I would say. I think the one specific tip that changed a lot of things for me was something like this. As you can see, the syllogism that I've highlighted here, posting specific questions in this. I have removed some of them from other sections because I don't want you guys to get like answers from mocks. Post syllogisms in your reflection and look at exactly where you went wrong and get the logic behind it and change it for a future mock. It's a fun process. It's quite relaxing. It almost gives you a day off in between like a sort of mock. You can get a day off to reflect on it. And yeah, I would say that is more or less it for this video. If you have any questions, let me know, comment it below. If you're new to this channel, subscribe to me, and I will be taking people through the medicine application process from start to finish. And yeah, I will try and brush up on my decision making so I can make a walkthrough for that. But thank you for watching to this video so far. If you're still watching at this point, I'm very impressed. I feel like I've rambled the entire video. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.